Okay, guys, we will make a start now. So welcome everyone to our GCSE Maths session. In today's lesson, we are going to be looking at the sine rule. Okay, and this is a higher topic. It's not for people who are sitting foundation exams. It will be useful for people who are looking to pursue sort of higher exams. Even if you're in year 10, it will be useful for you. Um, So that's where this topic takes us. If you are doing foundation, you might want to leave the meeting, and those who are in year 10, you're still fine to listen to this topic. Okay, so we're going to start off by looking at labeling the triangle, same thing that we did in our last lesson. Then we're going to move on to the sine rule, and then we're going to finish off by looking at some exam questions. Okay, so for those of you who joined us early, the starter question, which was on the screen, was our last question that we did in our last lesson. Okay, so it says work out the size of angle BAD. Okay, so I've got a model answer for those of you who want to check your answer. But essentially, in order to answer this question, all you had to do is split up this triangle. So we needed BAD, which was this angle over here. In order to work out that angle, you literally needed to split up this triangle like this. And you would know that this angle over here is 90 degrees because it's a right angle. And you would just need to work out this part of the angle and add it to 90 degrees. And you can work out that because you know that this distance over here is 4 meters. The whole distance is 6 meters. So this distance must be 2 meters. And then if this distance is 15 meters, you know that this distance is also 15 meters. And then using that, you can work out what x is, and then you can add 90 to it to work out the whole size of angle BAD. Okay, and then just remember to give your answer to 1 decimal place. So here's the answer, and here's my working out as well. So over here, as I said, we've got 2 meters, 15 meters, and to work out the area, sorry, not the area, the angle of this angle over here, just this over here, you have to use tan, as you can see, inverse tan of 2 over 15. And if you did that, you would have got an answer of 7.5946. That would be this angle over here that I've shaded in red. And then once you've done that, you would just need to add it on to your 90 degrees to work out the whole angle of BAD. Okay, and that should get you an answer of 97.6. Okay, so that's what we finished off by looking at in our last lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to move on to looking at the sine rule. Okay, so first thing first, before we move on to solve any exam questions or examples, we're going to start off by looking at labeling the triangle. So as you've probably seen with Pythagoras' theorem, we started off by labeling the triangle. With SOHCAHTOA, we started off by labeling the triangle. And with the sine rule, we're also going to start off by labeling the triangle. Okay, and it's relatively simple. This time you don't need to know any complicated words, no hypotenuse, adjacent or opposite. You just need to know your letters. Okay, so first thing first, all you're going to do is you're going to label each corner with a capital letter. Okay, so you're going to label each corner with a capital letter. So you're going to label one capital A, the other one capital B, and the other one capital C. Okay, so the corners are always going to be labeled with capital letters. Okay, and then the sides are going to be labeled with lowercase letters. So this the side which are opposite to the corner. So this one over here is capital A. So the side which is opposite it is going to be lowercase a. Okay, so we're going to label this as lowercase a. Over here we have capital B. So the side which is opposite it is going to be lowercase b. We're just going to label it as lowercase b. And then over here we have capital C. So the side which is opposite it is going to give you lowercase c. Okay, and that's it. That's all you need to know for labeling the triangle in the sine rule. And it's the same concept for the cosine rule as well, which we look at in our next lesson. Okay, so if we have a look at this triangle as well, it doesn't matter which corner you labeled with which letter. It really doesn't matter. All you need to remember is that um, the side which is opposite to that corner must be labeled with the lower format of that letter. So let's say that we said that this was capital A, this was capital B, and then this was capital C. The side which is opposite to this capital A is this side over here, and therefore that side is going to be lowercase a. We've got capital B over here, therefore the side which is opposite the capital B is going to be labeled as lowercase b, just like that. And then finally we've got capital C in this corner, so the side which is opposite it is going to be labeled as lowercase c, just like that. Okay, and that's literally how you label triangles when you're doing the sine rule or the cosine rule. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know in the Q&A and I'll get back to them as soon as possible. Any questions which are not directly relevant to what we are doing, we will answer them towards the end of the lesson. Okay, moving on to the formulas. These are the formulas. Now, don't worry if they seem complicated because they're not that complicated. And when we look at an example, it will make more sense. So over here, we've got two formulas. And as you can see, we've got this formula I'm labeling as 1, and this formula we're labeling as 2. And as you can see, they're both the same formulas. However, what's on the numerator and the denominator has literally switched. Okay, so we originally had sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. Then we have A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. It's literally flipped. Okay, and we will use this formula, formula 1, when we are working out the length of a missing side. Okay, and then this formula, the formula at the top, is the formula which we will use when we are working out the length of a missing angle. Okay, so if you literally just learn one of the formulas, the other formula will be very easy to derive, okay? Because you know you just have to switch the numerator and the denominators around. So over here, we're going to start off, the questions that we're going to start off by looking at is going to be working out the length of a missing side. So we're originally going to be using this formula over here. Okay, so A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. And we're going to take this step by step until we get to an answer. And then I'm going to give you some questions to have a go at yourself, and then we'll go through them as well. So if we start off, this is a question that I'm going to go through with you step by step. Okay, so step 1, when we're given a question like this, is going to be label the triangle. So over here, again, how do we label the triangle? We label it with capital letters and lowercase letters. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to label this as capital A, I'm going to label this as capital B, and I'm going to label this as capital C. So I've just labeled the corners. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to label the sides. So opposite this side, we have our lowercase a. Opposite this corner, we have our lowercase b. And then opposite this corner, we have our lowercase c. Okay, so we've labeled the triangle with our letters. Now what we're going to do is we are going to cross out the letter which we have no information about, which we don't need at all. So cross out letter we don't need at all. So as you can see over here, in this triangle, we need A because we know the angle. Okay, and we need lowercase a as well because we know the side. We need B because we know the angle. And we need B definitely because we need to work out what B is, because B is X. Okay. Over here, we don't need C. Okay. Like we don't need C because we have no information about C. Okay. We don't know the angle and we don't know the side. So we're just going to cross out C. Just like that. It's totally irrelevant. Doesn't matter what letter you put on the different sides. It doesn't matter what letter you put on the different sides. Just make sure that your letter, the lowercase form of it, is opposite to the capital form of it. Okay, so over here we had capital A, so the side opposite it will be lowercase a. Okay, just remember that the lowercase and capital letters have to be opposite to each other. Okay, and that's it. It doesn't matter which corner you label with which, as long as the lowercase and capital letters are opposite to each other. So we cross out the letter we don't need, so we've crossed out C. Step 3 is going to be write down the formula. Okay, so remember the formula was A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. Okay, that was our formula. Okay, now remember we crossed out C, so we don't need C. So we're going to cross out C from our formula as well. Okay, if you didn't need B, you can cross out B, it doesn't make a difference. If you didn't need A, you can cross out A, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, but the way that I've labeled the triangle, I didn't need C. So I crossed out C, and I've crossed out C from the formula as well. Step 4 is going to be substitute. We're going to substitute into the formula. So we have A over sine A equals B over sine B. Okay, because we've crossed out C over sine C. Lowercase a, what's lowercase a? Lowercase a is 13. Okay, now I'm going to bring it just here. So we're going to have 13 over sine A. What's capital A? Sine capital A. Capital A is 100. Okay, so we're going to have 13 over sine 100. And that's going to be equal to lowercase b. Where's lowercase b? Lowercase b is over here. Lowercase b is x. So we're going to write x like that over sine capital B. Where's capital B? Capital B is over here and capital B is 38. Okay, so it's going to be x over sine 38. So if we have a look at this, in order to work our x, we just need to do a bit of rearranging. Okay, so we want the x by itself. At the moment, it's being divided by sine 38. So we're just going to move the sine 38 to the other side. And because we're dividing on this side, we're going to multiply on the other side. So it's just going to be 13 over sine 100 multiplied by sine 38. Okay, and that's going to get rid of this from this side, and you're going to just be left with x on that side of the equation. Okay, so this is what you can type into your calculator. Okay, so we're going to have 13 over sine 100 multiplied by sine 38, close your brackets, and that's going to give you x as 8.127067597 dot dot dot. Okay, and it does say to one decimal place, so we're just going to round it over here. So we're going to get x equals 8.1 centimeters as our final answer. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If you guys want to note down my method or want to ask any questions, now is the time to ask. We're now going to move on to another example, an exam question which I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to have a go at, and then an even harder one. Okay. So we're going to move on now. Just to reiterate, label the triangle first, cross out the letter you don't need, write down the formula, substitute into the formula, and then if you were to have a step 5, rearrange to find x. Okay, so those are our 5 steps when it comes to working out the um, length of a side. When do we know to use this formula or the other ones? Okay, so when you use this formula, what you will realize is that you will have two angles and one side, or two sides and one angle. Okay, so you use this formula. I'm assuming you're asking about the when you use the sine rule or the cosine rule or trigonometry. First of all, you use the sine rule when you have non-right angle triangles. Okay, so remember last lesson we looked at SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA is only used when you have right angled triangles. Okay, but obviously you're not going to have right angled triangles all the time. Sometimes you're going to have normal triangles, okay, that have different length sides. When you have those, you have to use the sine rule or the cosine rule. Okay, you use the sine rule when you have two sides, well, when you have two sides that you know and one angle, or you have two angles that you know and one side. Okay, so in this case, we had two angles and we had one side that we knew. Okay, so we knew 13, 100 degrees, 38 degrees. Okay, that's when we use the sine rule. When we have two angles that we know and one side that we know, or when we have two sides that we know and one angle that we know. That's when you use um, the sine rule. Okay, the cosine rule we'll look at next lesson. But again, there's a way to work out when you would use the cosine rule. But over here, if you're talking in terms of the formulas, when we're working out the side, so in this case, we were working out the length of a side, which was x centimeters, we have to use this formula, a over sine a equals b over sine b equals c over sine c. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. Um, Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to move on now to a question which I'm going to give you to have a go at. Okay, so it says work out the length of base here. For this question, I'll give you guys 2 to 3 minutes and then we'll go through it. After this question, I have a 5 more question which you guys can also have a go at. So first of all, have a go at this one. If you're getting stuck at any point, let me know and I'll be more than happy to help. Once you've got an answer, just let me know in the Q&A. Okay, guys, I'll give you 1 minute and then I'll go through the answers. Okay, I'm going to go through the answers now. Okay, so it says work out the length of BC. So how do we do this? Okay, so we've got our corners labeled for us this time, so I'm not going to label them again. Capital A over here. So the side which is opposite A is going to be lowercase a. We've got capital B over here. So the side which is opposite A is going to be lowercase b. And then we've got capital C over here. So the side which is opposite A is going to be lowercase c. Just like that. We need to work out the length of BC. BC is from B to C, so it's this. Okay, let's write down our formula. Our formula is A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. That's our formula. Now, which letter do we not need? Okay, so we need A because A gives us an angle and it gives us our x, so we definitely need A. We definitely need C because C gives us our angle and it gives us our side length, which is really important. B doesn't give us anything. B is literally empty. The angle, we don't know B, and we don't know the length of the side. So we're just going to scrap B because we don't need it. So we're going to scrap B from our formula as well. So now in our formula, we're just left with A over sine A equals C over sine C. Okay, now lowercase a is x, so we're just going to have x over sine capital A, which is 42 degrees. Okay, and that's equal to lowercase c, which is 5, which is there, over sine capital C, which is 53. Okay, so we've got our sort of equation. All we're going to do now is we're going to rearrange this to make x the subject of the formula. Okay, so at the moment, x is being divided by sine 42, but we don't want it to be divided by sine 42. We want x to be by itself. So we're going to do the opposite of it and bring x to the other, bring sine 42 to the other side. So we're going to multiply because at the moment it's being divided. So we're going to multiply. We're going to have x by itself on this side. We're going to have 5 over sine 53. And then we're going to multiply by sine 42. Okay, and then this you can just type into your calculator. So if we type in 5 over sine 53 multiplied by sine 42, we get an answer of 4.189211461 dot dot dot. And it does say to 3 significant figures. So we're going to round it to 3 significant figures. So 1, 2, 3, 9 rounds up. So our answer is going to be 4.19 meters. That's our final answer. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have any questions, please let me know in the Q&A, but we will move on now. So for finding the side, before we move on to an angle question, This is the final question, and this is a 5 mark question. So again, have a go at it. I'll give you guys 4 minutes um, to get to an answer, and then we'll go through the answers. If you guys are struggling at any point, please let me know. For any of you who are struggling, just remember, when you have a right angle triangle, you're probably thinking either Pythagoras' theorem or SOHCAHTOA. When you have a right angle triangle. Okay, I'm just going to give it 1 more minute. We're seeing a mixture of different answers this time. Okay, I'm going to go through the answers now. So it says work out the value of x. Okay, now as you can see in this triangle, x is over here. And in order to use the sine rule, what do we need to know? There are two possibilities. Okay, we either need to work out, we either need to have two angles and one side, or we need to have one angle and two sides. If we have a look at this scenario, we have two angles, 40 degrees and 65 degrees, but we have zero sides. We don't know the length of x. Okay, so we have two angles and zero sides. Okay, so first of all, because we have another triangle connected to this triangle, there's one side which is common, and that's this side that I've just gone over. Okay, so if we can work out the length of this side, we will have two angles and one side, which means that we can use the sine rule to work out what x is. So we're going to work out the length of the side that I've just sort of highlighted in red, a bit darker. So how are we going to do that? Well, we have a triangle like this, sort of like this, with a right angle, 13 and 5. Now, when we have a right angle triangle, I told you it's either Pythagoras' theorem or SOHCAHTOA. Now, SOHCAHTOA can only work when you have at least one angle. Okay, we don't have any angle. Okay, we don't know this angle and we don't know this angle. So we can't use SOHCAHTOA. We know the length of two sides, so we can use Pythagoras' theorem. Okay, so that's when we use Pythagoras' theorem, when we know the length of two sides. Okay, so we know that Pythagoras' theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So let's label. We know that c is the longest side in the triangle opposite to the right angle. So the right angle is over here. So the side which is opposite it is going to be our c, or the hypotenuse. And then the other two sides can be a and b in any order. Okay, so I'm just going to label this as a and this as b. If we substitute into our formula, we're going to have, this is the side that we need to work out. A is the side that we need to work out. So we're just going to have x squared plus b squared. B is 5. So we're going to have 5 squared. And that's equal to c squared. C is 13. Okay, so we're going to have it equal to 13 squared. Now, x squared is what we're working out. 5 squared is 25. And 13 squared is 169. Okay, if we rearrange to get x by itself, all we're going to do is we're going to subtract 25. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other side. So we subtract 25 from the other side. We get x squared on this side by itself. And we get on the other side 169. Subtract 25. And that's going to give us 144. And then we don't want this squared at the moment. The opposite of squaring something is square rooting that same thing. So to get rid of that squared, we're going to square root the other side. So we're going to get x is the square root of 144, and the square root of 144 is just 12. Okay, so it's just 12. So this x that we've just figured out over here is 12. So this side is 12 centimeters. Okay, now if we use that and draw the next triangle, the one that we've highlighted in red, we're going to have something like this. This is not a right angle triangle. We know that this is 40. We know that this is 65. And we know that this is x. And we know that the side that we've just worked out is 12. So now we're going to use a sine rule because we know two angles and one side. We're going to label this as capital A, capital B, capital C. Okay. The side which is opposite it, we're going to label as lowercase a. The side which is opposite it, we're going to label as lowercase b. And then the side which is opposite c, we're going to label as lowercase c. Okay. Now, which side do we not need? Okay. Now, this is a bit confusing, and that's why I've realized why people have got a mixture of different answers. Okay. So if we have a think about it, what's actually happening over here? We have 65 degrees over here, and we know the angle, but we don't know the side which is opposite here. We have B, where we know the angle and the side, so we definitely have to keep B, okay? Because we know the angle and we know the side, so it's going to be the most useful. For C, we don't know the angle, but we need to know the side. We need to keep C because C is x. Okay, so we need to keep C even though we don't know the angle because C is x. Okay, and if we scrap C, then we're not going to be able to work out what x is, and that's our main aim for the question. So we have to keep C. We have to scrap B. And so we have to scrap A. Okay, because A, we don't know the side, we just know the angle. However, now if you go back to lower down in the years, what do angles in a triangle add up to? Angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So we can work out what this angle C is because we know the other two angles. Okay, so over here, this angle we can work out because we know what 65 degrees, we know what the other two angles are. Okay, so we would just do 65 add 40, and that's going to give us an answer of 105. And then we're just going to do 180 subtract 105. And that's going to give us 75 degrees. So this angle over here is 75 degrees. Okay, now problem solved. We know angle C and we need to work out C. Okay, so just like that, this question was literally assessing your ability to not scrap C. Many people will scrap C because we don't know anything about it, but you need to keep C because C is X. Okay, so our formula, A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. We've scrapped A, okay, because we don't need A. Okay, we need to keep B and C. So lowercase b is 12 over sine capital B, which is 40. And that's equal to lowercase c, which is x, over capital C, which is 75. So sine 75. And all you're going to do now is you're going to rearrange. So at the moment, the x is being divided by sine 75. We want x by itself. So to get rid of it, we're going to do the opposite of it, which means we're going to multiply it to the other side. So we're going to have 12 over sine 40 multiplied by sine 75, and that's going to give you x. Okay, you can just type this into your calculator now. So 12 over sine 40 multiplied by sine 75, and that gives you an answer of 18.0 to 1 decimal place. Okay, so that should be your answer for 5 marks. The main thing over here that people would have got confused with, the Pythagoras' theorem should be rather straightforward because we've looked at the couple of weeks back, and you should have got that the length of this side is 12 centimeters. The confusing part would have been the sine rule part because you had something that you knew about all three letters. Okay, that's why just remember when you're using the sine rule, never discard the letter x. Okay, always keep that letter because if you discard x, then you're not getting to an answer. Okay, you don't want to discard it. Okay, over here, when you're given two angles, always remember, never forget your basics. You can work out your third angle because you know that angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so we're going to move on now. That was the hard question that I had for working out the side. We're going to move on to an angle example now. Okay, so remember there were two formulas that we went through. A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. When you're working out the angles, you literally just flip the formula. So it goes sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. Okay, so the same concept. I'm going to go through this one and then I'll give you one to have a go at yourself. Okay, and if you have time, yeah, there's another hard question over here that I have. Okay, so step one is going to be label the triangle. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with here, A, capital B, and capital C, labeled it. Opposite capital A, I'm going to label as lowercase a. Opposite capital B, I'm going to label as lowercase b. And opposite capital C, I'm going to label as lowercase c. Just like that. Okay. Step 2, I'm going to cross out the letter which we don't need. Okay. So in this case over here, which letter do we have no information about? So we know A and we know lowercase a. So we're definitely keeping A's. Okay, C is X, so we have no option but to keep C. So we're going to keep C. Okay, now B, we're going to cross out. We don't know the angle and we don't know the side. So we're going to cross out B. Step 3 is write down formula. Okay, so we had for our formula, because we're working our angle, which is X, we're going to flip the formula around. So we're going to have sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. Now, what have we crossed out? We've crossed out B's, so we don't need this part of the formula. Okay, all we need is sine A over A equals sine C over C. Okay, and now all we're going to do is we're going to substitute into the equation. So sine capital A, what's capital A? Capital A is 95. So we've got sine 95 over lowercase a. Lowercase a is over here 6.7. 6.7. And that's equal to sine capital C. What's capital C? Capital C is X. So it's going to be sine X over lowercase c. Where's lowercase c? Lowercase c is over here, 5.4. So it's going to be over 5.4. Okay, now all we're going to do is we're going to get the sine x by itself on one side. Okay, so sine x, let's leave it on this side. At the moment, it's being divided by 5.4. So to get rid of that 5.4, we need to do the opposite of dividing. We need to multiply it. Okay, so we're going to have sine 95 over 6.7 multiplied by 5.4 equals sine x. Okay, but we don't want sine x. Okay, we just want x. What's the opposite of sine? The opposite of sine is inverse sine. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to inverse sine everything on the other side. Okay, so all we're going to do is we're going to inverse sine to the negative 1 of sine 95 over 6.7 multiplied by 5.4, and that's going to be equal to x. Okay, so we've just got rid of this sign by inversing sine the other side. Okay, and to get inverse sine on the calculator, for those who don't know, you literally click shift and sine. Shift sin. So if we type that into our calculator, shift sin, we've got sine 95 over 6.7 multiplied by 5.4. Close your brackets, and that should get you an answer of 53.40823774. Okay, and to three significant figures, 1, 2, 3 is 53.4. Okay, so just to reiterate, if you have any questions, let me know on working out the angle. When we're working on the angle, we label the triangle, same thing as normal. We cross out the letter which we don't need, same thing again. Keep the one with the x. You write down the formula and you scrub the one that you don't need, the letter that you don't need. You substitute into the formula. You rearrange to get sine x by itself. And then once you've rearranged to get sine x by itself, you inverse sine the other side to get x by itself. And then if you type it into your calculator, you will get your final answer. Okay. And if you have any questions, let me know. But we're going to finish off with this exam question, and I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to have a go at it. Next lesson, we will have a look at this question as a recap. Okay, so this question just to finish off today's lesson. Okay, I'm just going to give you 2 more minutes. Okay, I'm going to go through the answers now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off by labeling the corners and the sides. Remember when I said sine rule, you had to know at least two sides and one angle, two sides and one angle, or two angles and one side, either of them. Okay, so over here we need two sides and one angle, so we can use the sine rule. So I'm going to label this as A, capital B, and then capital C. Side opposite capital A is just going to be lowercase a. Side opposite capital B is going to be lowercase b, and side opposite capital C is going to be lowercase c. Okay, now which letter do we not need? Totally irrelevant that we don't need. We need A, definitely, because A is X. We need it. We need B because we're given everything about B. We're given the angle and the side. We're not given anything about C, so we can just scrub that and cross it off. If we write down our formula, we're working out the length of a side, an angle. So it's going to be sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. And we've just scrapped C, so we're going to scrap it from our equation as well. Okay, so we have sine A over A equals sine B over B. Okay, now capital A. Let's substitute what's capital A. Capital A is X, so we're just going to put in X, and that's over lowercase a. Where's lowercase a? Lowercase a is over here, and that's 10. So we're just going to write in 10, and that's equal to sine capital B. Capital B is there, 60, So sine capital B, which is 60, over lowercase b is here, and that's 15. Now to work our x, we need sine x by itself first. At the moment, it's being divided by 10. So to get rid of that divide by 10, we're going to multiply it to the other side. Okay, and that's going to get rid of that divide by 10. We're going to be left with sine x on this side, and that's going to be equal to sine 60 over 15 multiplied by 10. Okay, and again, we want x. We don't want sine x, we want just x. So to get rid of this sine, we're going to inverse sine the other side. So to get x, we're going to inverse sine to the -1. So shift sign on your calculator, everything on the other side. So we are going to have sine 60 over 15 multiplied by 10. That's what we're going to type into our calculator. Okay, so if we type that into our calculator, sine -1 sine 60 over 15 multiplied by 10, that's going to give us an answer of 35.26438,968. Okay, so if we round that to three significant figures, 1, 2, 3, 6 rounds up, so we're going to have 35.3 degrees as our final answer. Okay, so that's going to be our final answer for this question.